Madam Secretary, I wonder if you could share with us, we talked about the denials of the Fox request. Share with us exactly what was requested and exactly why it was denied.
I would be happy to do that. I would like to not be incomplete, though, in my response, so I would prefer to do that for the record. I can tell you generally, at the risk of leaving something out, that they sought tips and complaints and what we call TCRs, tips and complaints and referrals with respect to Madoff conduct prior to his, I believe all of them, not just prior to his arrest, 2004 and 2005 examination reports, information with respect to the 2006 and present enforcement investigation, and then materials surrounding the Office of the Inspector General's investigation. But I don't want to represent to you that that is everything. I would need to do that for the record.
Well, could you give me an example how that might interfere with any current proceedings now, even hypothetical if you want to? That sounds like a very reasonable request to me. The case is closed. The SEC did nothing. Nobody was punished. We don't even know where all the people were that screwed up now. I asked you that last time and you couldn't tell me. Give me an example of why we need to protect this as proprietary information.
Congressman, first of all, you should know we have turned over tens of thousands of pages in response to this request, and a federal judge will make the decision whether, under existing FOIA exemptions, the SEC has appropriately withheld additional information. I can imagine that there could be information with respect to related parties to Bernard Madoff investment securities that may well be subject to investigation and ongoing enforcement by the Securities and Exchange Commission or the United States Attorney's Office that would not be in the interests of those investigations and actions to be disclosed. But that's a hypothetical because I don't know the specific answer to that. Be happy to try to provide that to you.
Yeah, it just seems like they're asking for records that are over 4 years old, and as old as how old are some of the records they're asking for?
Again, I don't know the very detailed specifics of their requests, but there's no question that these date back a number of years. But again, many tens of thousands of documents and pages have...
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Chairman, piece of advice. When someone asks you why you haven't turned over anything, the fact that you turned over 10,000 is not a good answer. Frankly, it sounds to me like the lawyers kind of cooked up an answer for you. And I'm going to just give my advice. You know, it's like all the days you didn't rob anybody, not that you robbed anybody. I mean, the fact that you turned over pages is no answer to the gentleman's question. The other thing I would say is this. The fact that a judge will ultimately decide it doesn't answer the question because the judge isn't preventing you from doing it. So, you know, again, you may have other reasons, but I would just recommend, the question was why not turn these over? The fact that you have turned over other things, not an issue, or that a judge may make you turn them over, doesn't go to your rationale for not turning them over.
Well, I should say, Mr. Chairman, I have a bias, we have a bias towards turning over anything that we can. There are ongoing law enforcement investigations by the Securities and Exchange Commission and the United States Attorney's Office with respect to individuals and entities associated with Madoff, and I believe that is the basis.
The gentleman will yield again. That gets right to the point that I think, let me make this proposal to my colleagues. That is, next week, would you be willing to conduct a confidential briefing, a members-only briefing that might give some more specifics about some of this? I think that would be very helpful, and that members who wanted to go could go. If you could agree to do that and get back to us, I think that would be very helpful where you could discuss some of this information. Because I realize there might be some constraints. I mean, if it's legitimate not to FOIA it, then that would be undercut by talking about it here. But I think if you were able to do your enforcement people could do a members-only briefing next week, that might be helpful. An additional 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That would be very helpful. My experience, and I've had a little bit of experience with some of the government agencies over the years, usually they want to avoid any sunshine to protect incompetency, not to really do the more upscale performance that you have suggested. And I'm not suggesting that yours is going to protect any unknown incompetency any further, but that's just been historically why I have seen agencies stonewall letting documents open to the press. And I guess every member of this committee has made it very clear and have been fairly passionate about the need to have transparency in government. And so I'd be interested in in having the questions answered in private, as the Chairman suggested, if necessary. And I'd also just be curious to know if the agency's call was wrong in withholding information that should be public, what are the consequences? What are the penalties for the employers that made that bad call?
Well, the staff makes the decision based on expertise and guidance and counsel from the General Counsel's office about whether or not information needs to be disclosed. We don't punish people if they made a wrong call about whether a document could legitimately be held under a Freedom of Information Act exemption. If somebody had a pattern of making bad calls or judgments, we would have to take that into consideration in a performance evaluation or another.
I think I got my answer. Just like the Madoff scandal, nobody's even had their wrist slapped. And I think maybe when we look at reforming the agency, we might want to put a little bit of personal responsibility and accountability there for that. I mean, right now, if there's no penalty whatsoever for making bad calls, and if anyone's ever been disciplined by the SEC, I'd like to know about it because I haven't yet. I've read some books. I've read all I could on the issue. I've heard the supervisors testify. I've heard the secretary testify. You know, we know nobody has been punished yet about the Madoff mishandling. We don't even know where those people are now, the 2 to 3 dozen examiners and investigators who blew the whole thing. I was under the impression you were going to find out for me and let me have that information, but I haven't received it yet. But I think what everybody's alluding to is we just want to see some accountability. I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. And as the Chairman said, we ask an agency head what time it is, and they start describing the clock till our time runs out. And I just wish we'd stop some of the game playing and just be kind of frank and forthright with this stuff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the extra time.
Gentleman from Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Schapiro, you mentioned in your testimony that on September 25, 2009, the SEC's Inspector General issued a report entitled Review of the SEC's Compliance with the Freedom of Information